Hi there, good evening and welcome to your third Sunday show of the season. My name's Scott Patterson, this is the Four Lads Had the Dream Network, and yeah, lots to discuss after a particularly busy weekend. Not a great weekend, we have to say, but a particularly great weekend, and it's nice to be joined by the originals. It's the first time we've done this in what feels like a very, very long time. I'm really pleased to be joined by Sheryl and Dougie. And Sheryl, you're a wee bit tender today, is it fair to say?
I am a wee bit tender, and it's nothing to do with the result. In fact, it might be part of the result, because even though I didn't see it, they still kind of managed to rake the first part of my Saturday evening. I was fortunate enough to be at Midfield for Oasis yesterday, and was going in and out, couldn't get a signal, so was heading out the stadium to find out what was happening, was relying on you guys in the group chat to keep me posted, and I was on the pints of tenants. But Oasis were wonderful. I know it's not big or clever, is it? There's nothing to boast about in that. But no, it was an absolutely incredible concert. It's just a shame that Rangers raked the first half of my evening.
Yeah, indeed. Dougie, I know you done it you were there Friday night, weren't you?
I was.
Enjoyed
it was the second best reunion of this weekend. But I've got to be honest, like away from the result yesterday, the performance yesterday, the Oasis concert made up for my weekend, because I'm not sure if any of the listeners were there. That's Andrew. I'm not sure if any of the viewers or listeners were at the Oasis gig, but Sheryl and I were just saying beforehand, it's my favourite gig that I've ever been at, and they sounded incredible. It was brilliant to be back. A bit of nostalgia.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, before we get into it tonight, I will give you a rundown of what we are going to discuss over the next wee while. I do want to say hello to our sponsors, individual sponsor for the podcast for this season. iSport Media are looking after the Sunday show between now and May, which we're really grateful for. And of course, we should say hello to our extended podcast sponsors, Black Rooster, Art of Gold, Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, and CSD Air Conditioning, all digging in and helping us as the season progresses, in whatever way that's going to be. Now, to be perfectly honest with you, speaking about the agenda for tonight, we're going to cover the match yesterday and all the bits and pieces that went alongside that. We will speak about the week that's coming up. Of course, we've got a second leg in Europe to play, which I think people have maybe lost sight of a little bit, considering yesterday's result. A very exciting second leg, which could open up a lot of exciting things for us, comes next week. We've got some transfer news to cover as well, as the podcast progresses. It would be wrong of me not to acknowledge the tragic incidents that happened at Ibrox yesterday. Everyone at Four Lads extends their deepest sympathies to the friends and families of the poor supporter that sadly passed away in the main stand. An extremely sad moment for everyone concerned with that. And as I say, everyone the podcast extends their wishes to those involved in that very sad afternoon. Dougie, I'll start with you. It seems only right I start with you. You've had a couple of weeks off. 1989-90 was the last season that we had when things were so really, really crap, really, really early on. We lost our first two games that year at home to St Mirren 1-0, and then we lost at Easter Road 2-0. It's quite clear that a lot of people are instantly jumping on the similarities now. Russell Martin's Rangers, with the team back then. The team that lined up yesterday was exactly the same team that pumped Victoria Pilsen midweek convincingly. Now, let's not beat around the bush here. It was a really convincing evening for that Rangers side. And when you see the team line up yesterday to play Dundee, who are inevitably going to be playing in a low block, there's not really anything in the starting 11 that gives you a huge deal of concern from a Rangers perspective, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think on the starting 11, Scott, that starting 11 deserved to stay the same, because for me, the manager made the changes after the Motherwell game, not necessarily on performance, but on who was following his instructions. It's clear after the game he was talking about players who were not doing what they were told, basically, and reverting to type. And that's what he's talking about. Tav potentially staying on the outside, Raskin staying in the middle, where he doesn't want that to happen, right? So he's picked players for Pilsen who were playing to the system that he wants to play. Therefore, you cannot argue with him choosing that 11 again, to win a must-win league match, because Europe is brilliant. We all want to progress against Pilsen. We all want to progress into the Champions League qualifiers. Through the Champions League qualifiers, we need the money from the tournament. But this is the trophy that we want. This is where we want success. And in my opinion, it's why Russell Martin was recruited. It's to get that domestic success, right? So it was right that he played his strongest 11. To your point, though, Scott, I think there's a big difference between playing against Pilsen and playing against your low block in Scottish football, your organised low block in Scottish football. Against Pilsen with that team, for example, the slick passing worked well, because actually what we were doing was we were inviting teams onto us, and we were then able to play the ball into the space behind. And Ant-Man and Gassama in particular found a lot of joy running in behind. That does not happen in Scottish football.
Yeah.
Right? So when you play that same formation and you play the same team and you expect a similar result, it's not going to happen. And we can sit here and talk about whether the players were the issue or the manager and the system is the issue. For me, that showed up a real fragility around Russell Martin's tactics, because he has an inability to mix it up. And right now, the question for me is whether the system is broke, or whether if you then make some tweaks to that team, you get better results. And what I mean by tweaks, right, is Asgard. There was a huge hype about Asgard in pre-season. It seemed that he was the signing that was catching the eye in training behind the scenes. If you put Asgard into that central midfield area and you have Ant-Man and Gassama out wide, you all of a sudden have a creative spark that can find balls through the middle. Without that, and when you've got Cameron, for example, in the middle of the park, and you've got Diomande, you've got industry. You've got players that work hard, but they don't have that creativity. So we became very easy to play against and very easy to predict against Dundee yesterday. And the proof's going to be in the pudding, right? When Russell Martin, because let's just get it out here right now, right? Russell Martin will be backed. Russell Martin's going nowhere. So anyone right now suggesting that after 2 games and our worst start to a league campaign since 1989, that it's time up for Russell Martin already, it's not going to happen. We're going to back this manager, right? That's the reality of it.
Yep.
And therefore, more signings will come. Russell Martin said it in the press conference, more signings are going to come in. It's about him adopting his style now. And we will be able to fully judge him when he has his players that suit his style. Until then, it's difficult to judge. But right now, as a supporter, not here as a tactical expert, I find it very, very difficult right now to see how this system is going to work against the low block in Scottish football.
Do you know the thing? I'm just going to come in if you don't mind, Scotty. Do you know the thing that I don't understand, just in line with what you were saying, Dougie? He has been very open that for quite a while he had an idea that he was going to go for this job, that there was a good chance he was going to get this job, and that he's watched our games. So that's where I'm even further confused by this, because this, I mean, we know it. He's played in Scottish football. He's played for Rangers. He's watched our games. The system that these teams use and employ against the low block when they're playing Rangers or Celtic, whatever, this can't be new information to him. So I don't understand why he doesn't seem to be able to do anything with it.
Nor me, Sheryl. And when you hear Dowell last week talking about a wake-up call and the manager yesterday saying about we're learning and adapting, for me that's an absolute nonsense, because as you said, he knows the league. He's been watching last season. He knows how teams set up against us. I thought Russell Martin was being brought in because he had a system that was going to easily find its way through the low block. It's not happening. The concern that I've got, right, the big concern that I have right now is Russell Martin's came in and it's very evident that the players that he inherited don't suit his system. So to get the best out of Russell Martin's system, we've had to drop James Tavernier, who's your captain, and Nico Raskin, who was your best player last season, as 2 examples. You're going to have to go through that team. Doesn't suit Suter, it doesn't suit Dessers, for example, right?
Yeah.
You could argue it doesn't suit Butland as well because of the ball at the feet piece as well. So for this system to suit the manager, you're going to have to fully invest in the manager, right? He's going to have to be allowed the time to rip that team up. What happens if it doesn't work under Russell Martin? What happens if you get to Christmas and the results are still not good? and you get to the end of the season and do you know what, it's still not great. There's no excuses when it gets to that point. You know, I just go back 12 months, right? Let's talk about 12 months ago, because Philippe Clement was a man under pressure last year. But there were so many circumstances last year. We were playing at Hampden, we had to reduce the wage bill, we had to get guys off the wage bill like Goldson, Lundstrom. A lot of those changes happened very late in the window. This is a worse start than it was last year. And make no mistake here, Russell Martin has been backed. We've been allowed to go and bring in, I don't know how many players we're at now, it must be 10 players.
I think
we've been able to bring in.
Now, yeah. 6 indeed were used yesterday, new guys.
Yeah. So actually, you get 6 new starters in the team yesterday, 6 new players in the team yesterday, 9 in total. You've got a bunch of guys sitting just now picking up a wage that we've not moved on, which is the extent of how much Russell Martin's been back to allow him to bring in his guys, to get them up and running, to be in this position right now where his system is not working yet, is a huge red flag for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with anything you guys have said there. Sheryl brought up the point that I was going to go to next, and one of the things that I think Russell Martin had went at pains to say when he came in was that they'd watched a large amount of the games last year. So and with Russell Martin playing here before, he can't be hugely surprised about every team. There'll be one team that will come to Ibrox and will have a go, and we know who that is, and we'll see that, I imagine, a little later this month. But every other club that comes to Rangers domestically will sit in and let us have the ball, and they'll let our defenders pay millions of passes across the pitch to each other. They'll be happy for us to build up that stat, whether we like it or not. Dougie, it takes us nicely onto things like tempo during the match and passing. I've written down general bravery, and I think that word bravery, I point that towards maybe the front 5. So your 2 wingers and Dessers and Cameron and Diomande in particular, who I think has had a real stodgy beginning to the season generally. I almost find it really surprising that Raskin has been the one that has dropped out as opposed to Diomande. However, I do think the system that Russell Martin's trying to pick and play does suit Diomande's game better. Yesterday, I felt he was missing again for huge chunks in that match. Yeah,
let's talk about the positive, right? If we didn't have Gassama yesterday, we'd be sitting here with 1 point after 2 games. Yeah. Gassama's maybe the only bright spark yesterday, and it's a player who had that bravery, right? Who was prepared to take the ball and run at it. You then have the debate just now around whether it's the mentality of the players. The players that you've just mentioned there, Dessers and Diomande, are the only 2 that were here last season, right? So for me, the mentality question almost becomes null and void when it's new players, right? Because this is Russell Martin's players or Kevin Thilwell's players. Is it the system, right? Because we had all these passes across the back. There was some stats posted on Twitter yesterday around the passing. No surprise that Suter and Giga until he was sent off were the 2 players with the most amount of passes. Everyone in front of him then effectively did not have anywhere near the numbers of those defenders, right? Which means that we were just passing it about the back, and it was safe. But is it safe because we're looking for an opening? We're passing it about the back right now because the manager's system is we're trying to allow teams to come on to us, play through the gaps and then move your way up. But actually, what happens when nobody comes at you?
Yeah.
What happens when the midfield just stays rigid, the defence just stays rigid? You give it to the midfield and they're looking for something to happen, but actually the back 4 are still, we talk about low blocks, it's just falling in deep, right? It's just the back 4 defenders getting behind the ball. That's what was happening. So every single time we had the ball and you were turning, whether it was midfield or the strikers, you're turning, you're facing onto players. And that's where I think the system is slightly broken. And that's where I think Russell Martin has to find a way of being able to break that down. Because if you fast forward into the later parts of the game, what ended up happening was panic stations. I don't know how many times I just seen lumping balls into the box. Yeah. And it was that floaty ball into the box as well. And Dessers is not he's not Mark Hateley, right? He's not a player who's renowned for a ball going into the box and him barging defenders out the way to put his head on it. You were just putting cross after cross into the box and it was just getting swept up. The Dundee players must have been having a field trip. They must have been just thinking, this is great. Rangers are just, completely devoid of any plan here and just lumping balls into the box. So, yeah, I think there's an element of bravery. But for me, I just go back to the system and I just think the system's broken just now. And that's the bit that the manager needs to find a way of being able to break down teams that come in and do the low block.
What about the leadership as well, guys? Yeah. That's what I was going to hit on to next. We found that last season as well. There was very, very few leaders within that team. And I know we're saying that there was only 2 players yesterday that weren't Martin's choice, but there is no leadership even within the ones that have come in. Is it that they kind of, I don't know, they cow down to the kind of culture that's around the club just now, because there is nobody. Suter looked all right during the week, but again, yesterday it was his pass that ended up getting Giga sent off as well. There's nobody willing to be brave. We're not getting the balls out to the wingers quick enough. By the time we get the back line, get the balls out to the wingers, they've got players around them. I think what we're in desperate need of is a few leaders, maybe a couple older guys coming in. I don't know. I know that Cody's away, but that was one of the things. I know he is older, but that was one of the things that kind of attracted me around him, that he had that bit of leadership. Because at the moment, the ongoing thing from last season is we do not have anybody that's willing to be brave, wee bit of leadership, and take the green by the scruff of a neck, in the way that maybe Raskin did occasionally towards the end of last season.
So Sheryl, I'm going to come back to you on Raskin just in a second, because I think there's an ongoing discussion over who we should have. If we're going to play with a 6, for example, should we be playing with the guy that's been playing with Belgium as a 6, or should we be playing with the new guy that's came in? Should we be playing Russell Martin's son as the 6? And for anyone that clocked all the stuff going on social media last week, that will absolutely resonate with them. On your point on leaders, it's a difficult one for me, because I almost think that to be a leader, you have to be a winner. And I don't want to get into the chat about, I see people are mentioning losers in the chat, and the chat tonight is extremely busy. So if you are popping things in there, bear with me, I will get to it.
I can't keep up.
I think to be a leader, particularly at Rangers, you have to be a winner. When you look back at the Rangers teams that we've seen previously, there's been lots of leaders in there, and every single one of them have got medals to back it up. They're not necessarily all captains, by the way. You're Ian Ferguson's, you're John Brown's, you're Lee McCulloch's. The sad thing for me is we're way back into a time where we shouldn't really be talking about these guys in the fashion we are. This should be an era of Nico Raskin being a leader, James Tavernier being a leader to a degree, Jack Butland, all of these guys should be mentioned as part of that now. And I think the only reason that we don't refer to them almost as leaders or question their quality as leaders in that group that's been mentioned so much is because they don't have lots of winners' medals. And I know that probably sounds really simplistic. You can't be a leader if you're not winning stuff. But I think in our 2-horse town, which I think is not going to be a 2-horse town this season, by the way, I do wonder if it is as easy as that. You cannot be a leader unless you've won something here. You can't pass on your sort of your bravado, your chest pumped out. You can't pass on that knowledge because you've not got the stuff behind you to back it up. I don't know if that's unfair. That's where I am on it. I do want to speak to you, Sheryl, about Raskin and Rothwell. I don't think Rothwell has had a particularly poor start to his career at Rangers. I've been quite impressed with him so far. However, by playing him in the 6 role, we are sacrificing Nico Raskin because Russell Martin evidently doesn't fancy him as one of the 2 playing slightly ahead of the 6. Is there an option for you to maybe move Rothwell in 1 and then put Raskin into the 6, or what would you like to see maybe moving forward? Because I think that 3 in midfield is a big problem just now. It has to have mobility, it has to have creativity, it has to be quick, they have to be brave. I'm not sure we're seeing all of those different ingredients together just now.
No, and I know, I don't know if you guys have heard anything, but there's rumours floating around of a wee fallout between the manager and Raskin.
Right, okay.
I don't know if you guys have kind of picked up on anything around that. I don't know. I think we're in a period just now where everybody's looking at everything dead forensically, and somebody says something on X, and then it's taken as gospel, and then he doesn't appear in the next game, or I don't know. I actually thought Rothwell had started pretty well, and to me looked like he might have the potential of being one of these leaders. We spoke about at the live night, Scotty, and we spoke about maybe him kind of playing that Stephen Davis role, that he was organising everybody, he was marshalling the midfield, he was shouting instructions throughout the game as well. So I thought he'd actually started quite well. I'm not sure of Russell Martin's opinion on Raskin. I thought Raskin came on tremendously well, particularly under Barry Ferguson. Yep. But I know there was wee issues around there during Barry's time with us as well. For me, you touched on it earlier, that the bigger issue within that midfield is Diomande. For me, I have no doubts that we'll probably see a great performance from him on Tuesday. But domestically, he's found wanting too much. He's too lightweight. The game passes him by. I wouldn't say he doesn't fancy it, but there's too many times where he's like a man down for me.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. A guy sent me a message I know relatively well and said that we're coming to that time where Dio will play relatively well and then he'll disappear for 8 weeks or so, and then everyone will be up in arms about how he's not playing. Or not playing to the extent that you want him to. Dougie, your thoughts on that midfield three? We know now exactly how Russell Martin wants to play. We've got a 6, we've got 2 high 8s that are going to be expected to be really mobile, play relatively advanced up the pitch, and be really involved almost as an offensive 5, if you like. Now, I think that in itself talks to Asgard. I think he fits into those 2 8s perfectly. I really do. I would love to say that it suits Dio's game and it suits Nicholas Raskin's game, but I'm not seeing it just now.
I don't think it does. To be honest, I don't think it. I think Diomande might suit his system, his style. Raskin, though, there's a debate of the 6 or the 8 for Raskin, right? I think Raskin sees himself more as a 6.
Yeah.
I think the reason why the manager's choosing Rothwell in that deep line role is more his composure. When he gets the ball, he lifts his head, he plays the passing. I think Raskin's a wee bit more combative, likes to get around the pitch, which is brilliant, right? But it actually leaves you a wee bit exposed in that position sometimes because Raskin wants to be running about everywhere, like a pit bull. I think Russell Martin wants his 6 to just always be there. And that's the reason why he's picking Rothwell above Raskin right now.
Yeah.
He then wants his 8s to be the guys that are peeling off wide and be the runners that are going in behind, allowing the wingers to come inside. And actually what you've seen against Panathinaikos earlier in the season was Raskin was doing that, but he was getting himself into some very good positions with no end product. Because actually, Nico Raskin's game is that combative, feisty, break-up player. It's not the creative side. And I actually think there's an issue there with Raskin in that he does not suit Russell Martin's system. Yeah. You have your best player doesn't suit the system. And there's an issue there for me, right? The issue is you've hired a manager who we've brought in because we think his system is going to help us win the league, right? That's why we've recruited him. You've then identified that the players that are there don't suit his system. So going back to my earlier comment, you're going to have to get rid of all the guys that don't suit his system because you're backing the manager. So we are going to have to get rid of our best player. It's the reality. I don't think there's a future. I can't see Raskin being here. I actually can't see him being here beyond the summer. The reality is if Nico Raskin does not sign a new contract, with only 2 years left, we have to sell him this summer. So I think Nico Raskin will leave this summer, but I actually think it's the right thing for Russell Martin because it'll then allow Russell Martin to stop trying to fit square pegs into round holes, which for me has been an issue since day one. When you talk about playing Aarons at left back, Suter at left centre back, you're then talking about where to play Raskin. We need to play players in their natural position. Raskin's best position is number 6. He is better than Rothwell. That's not even a dispute for me, but he does not play the system that the manager wants him to play, and that's where I think Nico Raskin will see his future at Rangers end, and it'll be unfortunate, but unfortunately, it'll be the right thing for Russell Martin's system, and if we are truly backing the manager, that's what's going to have to happen.
Mm-hmm. Can I just pick up? There was a comment there. Sorry, guys. I think it was DJ91 has said exactly what I was thinking in terms of the comment that Martin made after Motherwell, that the only person that there had been a bid for was Dessers. And I wondered if that was kind of aimed at Raskin, because there was a lot of speculation towards the end of last season that he wanted to go and that he would be away this summer, but it hasn't happened. So when I heard Martin say that, I did wonder if that was, not I think, but it was putting us all in the picture around Raskin and what was going to happen with him.
Yeah, it's a problem. That area is a problem. Can Rothwell and Raskin play in the same sort of deeper role together, almost as a two? That obviously takes away a bit more of the offensive threat that I think you're hoping to develop with the two wingers, a 10 and a striker. It also
means that the manager's going to have to change the system, Scott. Correct. And right now, I don't think the manager's going to change the system. I think the manager's firmly believing that his plan A is the best plan. And plan B is to do plan A better, Mark Warburton days. And actually, what you're going to see is the manager persevere with this system and try to continually coach the players into how to play the system. And it's going to be a question of whether the players will eventually pick up and be able to play this system. Because back to my point, he's going to have to make more signings and get rid of some guys that potentially as supporters we don't want to see leave because they suit his system. And it's only until he has all the round pegs, round holes, that we will truly be able to judge whether Russell Martin's the right man. Because I see a comment in the chat there around, Russell Martin's fooling everyone because he talks a good talk. That's how I'm feeling right now, right? Is Russell Martin says all the right things. And actually, I said it early on that, man, he talks really well. We all know people through work. It doesn't have to be football related that are absolutely brilliant at talking a good game. But actually, when it comes down to it, they cannot do the job effectively. They're the best bullshitters around, right? They should be car salesmen because they're the best in the business at it, right? What I want to see to truly judge Russell Martin is not the talk anymore. I want to see the performances. I want to see the results and him starting to walk the walk of what is coming out of his mouth.
Yeah. No, listen, I think that's quite fair. Two more things I want to speak about on the game yesterday. And listen, there's no doubt that these... the chat's been busy. This will be very interesting. Dougie, I'll direct them probably both at you, particularly the first one. Does it help booing our players in our own place?
No, it does not. Do you know what's funny? When you're talking about leadership group, the first thing that came into my head was Russell Martin did not help Kieran Dell by referencing him as part of the leadership group. Because look, my thoughts on Kieran Dell, right? We've not podded for nearly 12 months together, but I think it's very clear that I do not like Russell Martin. Do not like Kieran Dell, right? We Freudian slip there. Maybe I'll change my opinion on Russell Martin by the end of the season, right? But Kieran Dell, I do not like Kieran Dell, and I don't think booing him is the right thing. But I don't know whether we're booing Kieran Dell or booing the fact that was the change that was being made. Because a blind man could see that was not the change that needed to be made. Kieran Dell is not going to be the man who comes on the pitch for Diamande and changes the game in our favour. And the reason for that being, right, is Kieran Dell is a coward, right? Kieran Dell is technically a good footballer. He's one of these guys that can go into training, do a wee flick and trick, and you know what? He looks absolutely brilliant in a small park. See, when you put him into a big park, he is lost. He's too slow. He might have technical ability, right? But for one, he needs to face forward because he cannot turn around with a football at his feet. But Kieran Dell is a very good footballer, but he's a coward who hides. When there's a 50-50 challenge to be made, you know that Kieran Dell is not making that challenge. So I think that the fans were not necessarily booing Kieran Dell as a footballer and as a person, but they were looking at it and thinking, this is not the substitution that you should be making, Russell Martin. And I did not boo. I would never boo. I actually remember the supporters booing Cyril Dessers nearly 12 months ago after he didn't take the penalty in the cup game. Supporters didn't react very well to Dessers in the next game. So it's not the right thing. But Dessers responded to that last season. He went on to become league top goal scorer. There's your challenge there, Kieran Dell. If you really want to prove that you should be in a Rangers jersey, go out and fight for it. It's now the ball's entirely in your court. I've got no sympathy for any players, by the way. These guys are picking up an absolute fortune, money that you and I can only ever dream of. They're playing for the jersey that I could only ever dream of playing for. I'm happy just to be in Ibrox as a supporter. These guys are living my dream. Go and earn it.
Can I not ask, guys, because one of the bits of feedback that another friend gave me from yesterday, obviously I didn't see it, was that actually when he came on, he was far more effective than Diomande.
So, I'll come back to that, right? Because one of the things that I think Russell Martin said post-match, and I think this is where we need to be, it's a difficult one because people have made up their mind. And I get that. I understand that. People just haven't taken to him. I get that. I understand that. He's not a right winger. And I think in each time that he's came on, I think I can't honestly remember where he played yesterday when he came on, but when he was playing pre-Ant-Man coming in, he was playing in the right wing. And he ain't a right winger. I would like to see how he would get on, and the chat will go daft here, which I completely understand. But he's ultimately a centre midfielder. We've never seen him there. We've never seen Kieran Dowell play centre mid for Rangers, so we've no idea if he can play that role or not.
Let's never see it.
But why though? Why? You've no idea he could play that centre midfield role perfectly. You don't know he can't.
Doesn't have the work rate. Does not have the work rate. Doesn't have the pace, the work rate, the effort, the bravery. We talked about bravery earlier on around that midfield. He's a coward, Scott. He's an absolute coward. To your point, Sheryl, did he do okay when he came on? Do you know what? He's a technically good footballer. So when you give Kieran Dowell the ball in the right position, he put a nice ball in, for example. He looked okay with a few touches. Nico Raskin looked the best player when he came on. Tav looked the best player when he came on. Because at that point of the game, we're up the park. They're completely behind the ball. We're on the ascendancy. He can look good when he's get the ball. I want to see more. He's not good enough for me.
I'm not saying in any way, shape or form that I think that was the right change to make or I like him. I don't. I'm in the same place with you. But somebody had said to me, actually, for that booing, he contributed more than Diomande when he came on yesterday.
Diomande's been very poor. I don't disagree with the comment, but a large part of that's because Diomande's been so bad. Diomande had a terrible game again. There was an effort in the second half right in front of me because I sit in the Copeland. Gassama done brilliantly to get it to the byline, cut it back to Diomande. This isn't nothing each, by the way. And Diomande powder puffs the shot back into the keeper's arms. See when you're creating very little, as we did yesterday, see chances like that, they are gold. And you need to be doing a lot better. And Diomande, for me, he's one of these guys that right now he's flattering to deceive. Diomande's got all the attributes to be an absolutely incredible footballer, but he's not delivering.
I did say at the Walters gig, Sheryl, you remember this? You were standing next to me. I said it, that I think we'll see way more of Kieran Dowell this season than anyone thinks, and I think you're going to continue to see him as the season progresses. I doubt he'll be one of the ones that moves on between now and either the end of August or potentially even in January. I think Russell Martin likes him ultimately, and I think he's going to be around for the season, to be perfectly frank. Dougie, again,
Scott, see just on that before you move on, that will be something that fans will hold against Russell Martin, right? Because fans have already made up their mind in certain things, right? They've made up their mind in certain players. See if after Motherwell, Russell Martin kept James Tavernier and Nico Raskin in a team, they would have said he mouthed off in the press after the game with zero substance, right? And he would have held that against Russell Martin because they already have their minds made up on certain players. For so many supporters, like myself, there is no way back for Kieran Dowell, and the best thing to do is to move him on, right? See if the manager perseveres with Kieran Dowell and it does not work, supporters will not blame Kieran Dowell for that. They'll look at the manager. So it's a very, very dangerous decision from the manager to make. A brave one. If he believes in Kieran Dowell, then crack on, because he knows exactly the system that he wants to play and the type of player that's going to suit it. If you think that Kieran Dowell's the right player, then listen, we're all backing the manager, right? We all want Rangers to succeed. Brilliant. But see if it does not work, it'll be another stick to hit the manager with.
Yeah. No,
and he dropped him, so he clearly doesn't believe in him. Do you know
what I mean? Him at right wing.
Today, yeah.
He needs pace out wide. That's why Gassama and Ant-Man are so essential to the way that we play football. Yeah. But he has, effectively, centre mid's a very strong position for Rangers. We were talking about centre mid, so midfield was the issue yesterday. It was a key issue yesterday because we did not have that link between defence and midfield and forward. That was because of the midfield. It's not working right now. But see, when you break it down and you look at our midfield players, Raskin's a Belgian internationalist, a player of the season last year. Diomande, people talk about as a £15 million player. You've signed Rothwell. Asgard's the player that everyone's raving about in the summer. Midfield should not be our problem, and therefore Dell should not be getting in ahead of any of those players. The reason why anyone's even thinking about playing Dell is because those players are not following the manager's instructions or pulling their weight right now.
Yeah, listen, I can't disagree with that. I do agree with that. I just think that, do you know, it comes down to, I've never booed a player at Ibrox. Do you know what I mean? And I think we're all in the same boat. I think the comment about potentially booing the decision as opposed to booing the player, I think is there or thereabouts. I do think there's a large group of the fans that just don't want to see Kieran Dowling around it anymore, which is entirely up to themselves. They pay the money. I do want to read out something before I speak about James Tavernier. What I do want to speak about is Russell Martin reflecting on the reaction of the support. And I'll read out verbatim just what he said post-match. The fans have lacked the success they want for quite some time, so I understand the frustration. I didn't get too high on Tuesday, so we're not going to get too low today. We're at a point now at this club where something needed to change. The ownership's changed, there's a new coaching staff, there's new players, and hopefully a new way of behaving in the training ground properly every single day regarding standards and what's expected of this football club. So it's not a quick fix, and it's not me coming out and making excuses. I think we change the manager from year to year and nothing really changes. So now it's really about changing the culture and the feel of the club day in and day out. That will end up in a good outcome. Good process, good people will always end up in a good outcome. This is the sentence I almost don't like, but maybe not so quickly as everyone wants. Someone looking in that maybe suggests that there's going to be more. We're going to have more Sunday shows like this between now and the end of the year, based on that last sentence, Dougie. And what I want to do is I want to come back a little bit if I can. James Tavernier steps up to take the penalty right at the death. And there was a bit of PTSD regarding Queen's Park. And I was so glad he stepped up and scored, because yesterday, if he stepped up and never scored, I think it becomes really, really, really hard for James Tavernier to come back from this, considering he's started the season dropped.
I completely agree, Scott. I actually said at the time, if James Tavernier does not score this goal, there is no coming back for him. And I think he knew that as well. And we spoke about leadership, right? There are different types of leadership. James Tavernier grabbed that ball, put it in the penalty spot and rattled it in the back of the net and then forced everyone back to the halfway line to get the game going again. That's a form of leadership, by the way. Now, James Tavernier is not perfect. Certainly at the back post, he's far from perfect, right? But James Tavernier, in the 10 years that he has been at Rangers, has stood up every single season that he has been here. In fact, the last trophy that we won is because James Tavernier from right back scored as the winning goal. When we got to a European final, James Tavernier was a Golden Boot winner and single-handedly dragged us to that European final. So for people to ever question his leadership, it's for me, it's ill-placed, right? Where you should place it is who's beside him. Where's the other leaders, for example? You know, you spoke earlier on around the team that was successful in the 90s when you had Gough as captain, but you had a team of leaders. We did not have a team of leaders, and that's the biggest problem. But fair play to Tav for stepping up and putting that away, because let's go back to Motherwell, right? He was the player that the manager picked out, him and Raskin. They were the players that the manager picked out as not doing their job, not being good enough. They're the ones that missed out against Pilsen, and they're the ones that did not start in the first league game at Ibrox. So they're sitting on a bench. Let's be honest, James Tavernier will be a squad player this season. He's 34 years of age. Max Aarons has been brought in on loan from the English Premiership to start every week, right? The expectation then is that a loan player who is outside of our financial capability, who plays in the English Premiership, should be substantially better than James Tavernier. The reason why James Tavernier is being used again is because the player who's there right now is not substantially better than him. Now, again, new players sometimes take time to bed in and all that good stuff. Hopefully Max Aarons goes on and develops into a better player, because right now, you're sitting here, who's better? I don't know what Aarons is. He's 25 years old. A 25-year-old loan player from the English Premiership, or a 34-year-old who costs us 200 grand. It's 50-50 right now. And you then kind of lean towards your own player rather than a loan player. And again, Tavernier comes into the starting 11, as he has done last season when Sterling was meant to be the right back, for example. We have continually tried to phase James Tavernier out. I think James Tavernier is well aware that he is here to be used as a squad player, but he keeps needing to be the one who steps up and showing that leadership, because we keep needing him to be the one to step up. And by the way, we should not be relying on a right back to be your top goal scorer after 2 games again.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think lots of your points there. One thing that I would end on, and we started off by speaking about the 89-90 season, how we lost those 2 games. We did win the league that year, for anyone that's interested. Sheryl, I do want to speak to you next week. It's obviously the second leg, Victoria Pilsen. We're off to, I don't know if they call it the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, Czechland. I don't know, but I know we're there on Tuesday.
Pilsen. We're away to Pilsen.
Pilsen, now we'll go with that. First leg was excellent, and as I say, I think the bits and pieces yesterday has kind of taken a bit of the shine off of the result that we saw midweek and how good Rangers were. I think it's easy to bypass that. He surely goes with, I mean, it's difficult to suggest that he goes with the same team on Tuesday night based on the fact that they haven't beaten Dundee at home. But considering they played so well on the Wednesday before, is there a need to really change it up massively on Tuesday for you?
No, I don't think he will. And I think we're back to this absolute brain that we had last season, right, that in Europe we're all right. We seem to be able to get ourselves up. I know, obviously, playing in 2 different types of approach. Pilsen gave us that space. They pressed us. That then exploited the space around them that we could get into. That was completely different yesterday. I don't think he will change that team. And I would argue, I don't think there's a great need for him to change that team, because we're back into this cycle of we'll probably put in a really good performance. I said it earlier in the pod, we'll probably watch Diomande have a standout game on Tuesday. I don't think he will change it. I've seen loads of comments about maybe putting Tav in instead of Aarons. I don't think he'll do that. No, I think he'll stick with the team that did the business in the first leg.
Dougie, Rob jumps in. Only change he would do would be bringing Raskin in. I should say Rob will be joining the team over the next wee while. We look forward to getting him involved in the chat. It's good to see he spend this Sunday night watching us to make sure he's familiar with the do's and don'ts. So he suggests maybe moving Rothwell on one and sitting Raskin in the 6. What would you do Tuesday night, Dougs, with regards to changes? Would you, I guess, is the first question.
Well, again, it all comes down to system. Right? I don't want to keep banging on this drum about system, right? But historically, in previous years, if you're going away from home with a 3-0 lead, you don't go 4-3-3 attacking. So,
yeah,
you would potentially go 4-2-3-1, and therefore you could play Raskin and Rothwell. So the eyes are there, or you could go 5 at the back is what I was going to say, right? But the eyes are then on the manager. Does he only have one plan A? And therefore it is around, you're going back to the 4-3-3, and it's then around who you're playing in that 4-3-3, and therefore who are the best players for it. Rothwell, one thing about Rothwell for me just to call out is fitness. Rothwell has not completed a 90 minutes yet.
Correct.
Now, yesterday, for example, I thought Rothwell was quite poor in the first half in particular. He was one of the many players who was too safe. I don't think he was ever trying to break the lines. The ironic thing about it, and one of the reasons I was frustrated yesterday, is when the manager took Rothwell off, and I know it was because of a tactical change that he eventually wanted to go a wee bit more gung-ho. When he took Rothwell off, Rothwell yesterday was actually just coming into the game and starting to grab it by the scruff of the neck that you want your players to do, and then we went and took him off. So yeah, I don't know what he'll do when it comes to Tuesday night. I think the back 5 is safe, the front 3 is safe. It's the midfield that the eyes are on. I think Rothwell will start. It's then who starts beside him. I don't think you'll see Lyle Cameron. in the starting 11 would be my prediction. I think you might see Raskin, but I think you might see that midfield three of Rothwell, Raskin and Diomande again. But I do think that's imbalanced. I do think it lacks creativity. But I think, given we've got a 3-0 lead going over to Czechia, they're going to have to come at us rather than us have to rely on like an Asgard to try and break that low block down. So I think it might suit the likes of a Raskin, Rothwell, Diomande. But I agree with Sheryl. I don't think there'll be many changes going into Tuesday night.
Roddy Wiley reckons Dowell may start on. Roddy clearly has not got the memo that we've discussed tonight.
I honestly don't know if my hairline or my heart rate can take Keaton Dowell being in the starting 11.
Do you know, I think he's absolutely right. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Dowell start in some way, shape or form on Tuesday night. I do wonder if he could just play Gassama through the middle, move Antwell across to the other side and have Dowell in there on the right to bash things out as and when required. It's very, do you know, and Lisa, who's watching on Facebook tonight, makes a great point, and I'm trying to share it now, hopefully I can. Mikey Moore, who I think is just about able to make his own big boy decisions from Tuesday. So it'll be interesting to see if he can be involved, Sheryl. That's just a bizarre situation, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's his birthday tomorrow, actually. I think he's 18 tomorrow from what I've seen online. It's completely bizarre. It really is. But listen, I would quite like the look of him coming in. I don't think that's a bad point at all.
He's not registered for tomorrow though, is he?
He's not. No, he's not. He didn't come in, that's right.
Yeah, I also think Moore for me's signed as one of the options out wide, right? So Antman and Gassama gave a lot. You know, Antman actually, we've not spoken about it, but he was fairly ineffective yesterday, which is a concern, and it's something we need to watch. I think he was very effective running into space. We've seen this so many times with wingers coming in that are very good. You know, Matondo, very good at running into space, but terrible running at players and beating players. Antman's going to have to adapt very quickly around the low block in Scottish football. But Moore for me is one of those players that you can alternate between Antman, Gassama and Moore to give you that width. I don't think we're going to see him through the middle. I might be wrong. We might deploy him there if you want to be more creative. But a player that we've not spoken about actually, Scott, is Bayrami. I seen a comment earlier on. You know, when we were going for the game and wanting to make positive changes, we brought on an 18-year-old rather than Bayrami. And I think one of the issues for that is just the system again. Bayrami's not a winger, nor is he a number 8. Yeah. So when the manager's reluctant to kind of move things around and play a 10, for example, Bayrami's there then on the bench kind of scratching his head thinking, what do I need to do to go on that pitch? Yeah. So for me, Moore won't feature on Tuesday because of the Champions League eligibility or the registration. But I think he'll feature against Alloa. I think there'll be changes. I don't want to jump because the Stevie, Kenny, etc. We'll chat through the Alloa prep come Friday night most likely. But I think there'll be changes, and one of the changes that you'll probably see is we'll need to start Fernandes. We've not spoken about the sending off. Giga picking up that red card, he will miss Celtic. If we do qualify against Pilsen and we do go ahead and fulfil the promise of postponing St Mirren, and therefore we've not even spoken about Fernandes in the pod since we got going again. For me, it's the one questionable signing so far. I think the signings, I've seen somebody commenting earlier on saying the signings look good on paper, and I think the signings do look good on paper. Fernandes is a one question mark for me because we paid good money for a guy who's not walking into the starting 11, and we ultimately brought in a loan player who would partner Suter, and we're still in the market for a left centre back. We are going to need to play Fernandes to give him some minutes on the park against Alloa to get him ready for Celtic coming to Ibrox. So it'll be interesting to see minimal changes Tuesday. I think you'll see significant changes against Alloa.
Yeah. So that takes me on to the it takes me nicely onto the next bit, which is about transfer news. So I don't know if you intended that, Dougie, but it's worked absolutely perfectly. Nobel Mendy, we of course heard at the weekend. I think he'd picked a move to Rayo Vallecano. That seems to not be the case now, and he is clearly has his heart set on coming to Govan, and has been reported by, and I'm going to butcher this, so I apologise in advance, Sasha Tavernier, I think. Looks like he could be coming to us after all, and by all accounts, it seems to be quite a bit down the line. Left-sided centre half, Sheryl. I wonder if he could be the left-sided centre half against Celtic with John Souttar playing on the right side.
Can he play left back as well?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you. My research hasn't gone that far.
Yes, I think he can also play left back as well. So I initially thought he was a replacement for Souttar, but I didn't know as well, because I don't know if you guys have picked up today. There's been stuff about Jefty perhaps going back to Brazil.
Correct.
There's been interest in Jefty going back to Brazil, so I didn't know if it was either the replacement for Souttar or potentially a replacement for Jefty. Yeah, that's one thing. To pick up on what you said, Dougie, I thought with Fernandes it was very much kind of put to us. I know circumstances change with the suspension for Giga, but Fernandes was very, very much a sort of project player. He was brought in to be developed kind of here and there, but with the next couple of years in mind. But obviously that changes with the sending off yesterday and having to change things at the back.
Yeah. I mean, Dougie, the reality is we don't really know much about Fernandes, to be perfectly honest with you. That's just the way of it. We don't know enough about him. Do you know, I wouldn't be at all surprised if things got... I mean, James Tavernier can play as a centre-half. And, do you know what I mean? Leader group. I don't think James Tavernier doesn't start against Celtic.
Scott, that's my only thought about Mendy. See, Mendy, right? We need a left-sided centre-back. I think there's an imbalance at the moment around left and right-footed, and it's what baffles me about playing Diomande right centre-mid. I think there should be a better balance, and I think Souttar's not a left centre-back. We've seen it when he was partnered with Goldson. He's more suited to playing right centre-back. We need a left centre-back, right? What age is he? Is he 20? You know, we talked about...
Mendy.
Yeah,
he's
young, isn't he? Yeah. The only thing I think about Mendy, right? So he's fairly unproven, he's fairly inexperienced. He came on in an important game last season against Fiorentina, and apparently done very well, right? We don't have great stats on Mendy or brilliant YouTube footage because he's not a player that's played a lot of football. I trust this board, actually, right? I think this board are a group who know how to run a football club. I think we can trust that they'll be bringing in players within their model that I think is the right model for us to be signing players, right? So if they've identified Mendy, I think it's for the right reasons. The worry that I've got is leadership. See, when you take Souttar out to play him at left centre back beside Giga, you're then taking out, and whether anyone agrees, you know, whether anyone thinks Souttar is a good enough leader is another matter, right? But you are taking one of the leadership group out to play a 20-year-old. And when we signed Mikey Moore, I got a wee bit of heat on Twitter because I don't think we should be signing a 17-year-old. And it's not because of ability, it's because he is still a young boy who's learning his trade. And I want to see guys who are a wee bit more proven, experienced, able to grab the game by the scruff of the neck when it's needed, like yesterday. And I just worry that some of the young guys don't have that. But hopefully they've got that kind of youthful energy where actually it's the opposite. You know, Alan Hansen said 1992, or actually it wasn't 92, but it was about the class of 92 that you don't win any trophies with a team of kids. That was a group of young guys that actually had the right mentality, and you can't then judge a player who's not yet signed like Mikey Moore, because you don't know what they're like as a person. So we might have identified and done our due diligence correctly. But my one concern on Mendy is just that character. Does he have the leadership qualities? I'm just going to make a comment on one of the comments that came in, because I was just about to pause there and let you come back in. But I'm going to just talk about Enciala quickly, right? Because one of my mates keeps going on about Enciala, because Enciala is a player that the manager's clearly told is not in his plans, and he can move on, right? The system the manager is playing right now arguably suits Clinton Enciala. He's a left-sided centre-back capable of playing with the ball at his feet. it's actually quite surprising to me that he is one of the players that the manager identified as not being in his plans. So obviously the manager's taken a look at him pre-season and said, you're not good enough for what I want, and you've got to trust the manager. But so far in what I've seen, a little bit surprised that Clinton Enciala has not been given a shot at left centre-back.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. 5 other names that are still in and around the football club, and of course they're being paid. Ben Davies, Rabi Matondo, Leon King, Ridvan Yilmaz, Jose Cifuentes, Jesus, and Clinton Enciala, all still in and around the building in some way, shape or form.
Can we add Bajrami to that? What do you think?
Say again, Sheryl?
Can we add Bajrami to that? What do you think?
Well,
Who fancies him?
I actually, I'll be honest with you, I think Russell Martin quite likes Bajrami.
You think?
But I just don't know if he finds a way that he can involve him. And I think if something was to come, for example, if we were to get an offer in for him at some point between now and the end of the month, even a loan, so the boy can go and get some game time, I think he would disappear. But I do think he quite likes him, to be honest with you. I think he sees something in him. Yeah, it's one of many interesting threads in and around this squad.
I'm just laughing at that comment, sorry, Scotty, which you'll maybe not put up.
You know what? I will because I've absolutely no issue with Mark getting involved in the chat. It's always good to have him on. Listen, it feels like a decent enough juncture to leave now, to be perfectly honest. Before we do go, I do want to say thanks to our Sunday show sponsors, iSport Media, looking after us all season. Really grateful for them doing that. And of course, our extended podcast sponsors, Black Rooster, Art of Gold, Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, and CSD Air Conditioning. The guys are back all during the week. They will be here tomorrow night to look ahead to hopefully another successful European night for Rangers. We are back in 2 weeks' time. Sheryl and I are back in 2 weeks' time on the 24th. Leanne Crichton's first game as Rangers women's manager. I'll be at Ibrox for that, so quite looking forward to that. And Dougie, you're back in November or something like that, innit? Something like that. We're bringing you back on.
Can't leave you. I'm just on a permanent holiday.
Dougie, it's always good to have you back on, and I have to say to the extended audience, it's really good for the three of us to be back on and have the opportunity to do this again. So I'm really glad. Dougie, good to see you, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah, great to be back on as a trio. Shame under the circumstances, but it's brilliant to be back podding as a trio. Hopefully next time we get together again, it's under more positive circumstances. Do you know what? I was just thinking there about all the topics that we've spoken about. We didn't even talk about serial debtors. Like, we can park that one for the next time we catch up, but I'll leave you with this one. Will we ever win a league with serial debtors as your number 9?
Oh my goodness. Dougie, not an hour in, buddy. Not an hour in. Goodness sake. Sheryl, you've had a really busy weekend and you look like you could do a wee nap, if I was being brutally honest with you.
Thanks very much, Scotty.
I mean that in a nice way. It's always good to have you on. I've really enjoyed it. Well done. Thank you.
Yeah, listen, I'm just delighted that we're back together because I think it was almost this time last year that the three of us kicked off. I think we were moaning as much then as we are now, so at least we're able to.
So don't forget to please like and subscribe. Get involved in the chats when the guys are on during the week. I think we are now north of 9,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, which is really exciting and something that we're really pleased about. It would be great if we could get closer to that 10,000 value as time passes, which I'm really sure we will. So if you're not doing it right, then make sure you are. We're back in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
The Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited, and CSD Air Conditioning, in partnership with Black Rooster and Art of Gold. Thank you for listening to or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.